Hello everyone, and welcome back to Laurel Gardens after a lengthy hiatus. The last few months have been fairly busy for me, and so I've not gotten a chance to play as often as I'd like, but I do finally have an update for everyone, and I'd like to share that with all of you. We are starting right now in the area that Masked Bandit had worked on for me. If you remember this from episode 1, you can see his restaurant off to the left there peeking through the trees, and then off to the right, of course, we have our paratrooper ride as well as our gift shop that he had created. I'm going to take a walk through this area and give you an introduction to what I've been working on over the last couple months and show you what my goals were, what I wanted to get accomplished. So as I walk through here, just to give you a reminder of the general feel of this area and the time period, you'll remember that we had a lot of inspiration in this area from Frank Lloyd Wright, and really just trying to capture that specific era, looking for some mid-century modern, maybe a little bit of brutalism, and you can see there's all kind of different architectural interest on both sides here. We're going to head down our stairs. Let's get ahead of our maintenance guy here. We are going to come past the restaurant that Masked Bandit had created. You can see all of the custom pieces in there that he had done for us. The lighting, the tables, the chairs. And then if we come here, this is getting close to the end of what he had worked on and the beginning of what I had left for him. So you can already see our Aero custom looper there, which pops up and over the path. Heads down towards the river on the left side, and everything opens up onto this large plaza. Now, when the park built this would have been a pretty big deal. Steel coasters like this with multiple inversions were still fairly new, and aerodynamics sort of had the corner on the market, along with Schwarzkopf having its own offerings, of course. And so you can see what I already had done, and I had done this partially to give Masked Bandit a little bit of an idea of the time period I was looking to capture here. But you can see everything is pretty angular and sharp, and it's an interesting mix of materials here. You've got a lot of concrete, you got some of this brick-like or large stone pavers, and of course we've got some nice foliage that by the time this park gets to modern day, you know, in the early 2000s and into 2020, these would have been pretty grown in. So I want to make sure we capture that feel as well. But you can see that the park has made a huge deal out of this ride by really making a plaza that shows it off and peeking across the other river, to the other side of the river. You can see one of our other coasters, which one day you will hopefully get better acquainted with. And then, of course, pay no attention to all of the clutter that I've got, various things that are waiting to go into the park somewhere. But there is a lot left to be done in this area. We've got a train crossing there that you can see that will eventually go across the river that kind of just stops there right now, and also is going to cross over the path that does not exist, right in the middle there. We've got a big open space here that needs a building of some kind. I'm thinking probably restrooms, because there really aren't any restrooms nearby as of right now. And then of course we need to get access to the station, most importantly an entrance path that does not exist. If I kind of zoom back over here, you can see there is a station here right now that is pretty immediately adjacent to the plaza, and there is an exit path. And one of the challenges that I sort of gave to myself is that the station is not parallel to the way that this plaza is going, but the exit path is. And I've got some ideas you guys will see in the next half of the video here on how this actually comes out. And I'm really pleased with what it looks like. But it took me quite a while to figure out exactly how to do it. With all of that, let's go ahead and jump into the next part of our video where you see the after of all of this. So here is the after part of the video where I'm going to show you what I have accomplished over the last couple months. Now normally I do an update style video where I show you my progress as I go along, but since I've been working on this so much off and on, it's just easier for me to sort of show it off all at once. And so I'm starting over here with one of my favorite spots that shows off the corkscrews here on our classic Aero custom looper. And of course this vantage point was made possible by the awesome restaurant with this outdoor seating that Masked Bandit had created. So I very much appreciate that he was able to capture this with his build. So we're going to head back into, I'm going to take a quick shortcut here, and we're going to make our way into the area. So at first look, things don't really look that much different here. But as we start to creep in, you'll notice the first thing to hit you is this station that is now complete. And this took me quite a while, as I had said in the last part of my video, to really figure out exactly what to do with this. But there are some really neat elements to this. First thing you'll notice here, it's all very much concrete, stone, a little bit of metal here, wood on the underside of the roof. So it's still keeping with that interesting mix of materials. But one of the things that I really wanted to capture with this was that sense of sort of a floating roof where you can see there's pillars, but they're pushed towards the inside of the building, so that the outside, the edge of this roof is completely unobstructed by pillars. And so you really get this neat effect where it looks like the roof is kind of floating up above that. And then this staircase here that is not parallel with the station building, it's a couple degrees off, has this really neat roof over top of it, this sort of modern or mid-century modern lattice look to it. And then this stone structure is poking up from the middle here. And you can see that the stairs are floating up above this. They would probably have this sort of cantilevered through the building for structural integrity, but it gives that really nice openness underneath. I haven't decided if I want to put something underneath of that yet or not. And then this would have probably been an afterthought, or certainly created many years after the ride had opened, as the ADA compliance came into effect where you needed to have accessibility to your rides. So I did try to make this look like it was created well after the ride itself had existed. And that's one of the many things that needs to be worked on further. But at least I've got a spot for it and it makes sense. One of the challenges in creating this area was to get the path tool to work for me. Of course, that's always a challenge in Planet Coaster, but you can see there are spots where I wasn't really able to hide the edges. What I ended up doing was sinking all of the terrain down underneath of this and creating my paths on an elevated surface so that I could cantilever everything out over top of the water. I couldn't really have terrain cut through the middle of this and change or slope down underneath a part of it. So I had to make all of the pathwork elevated so that I could make it seamless. And so with that, I was able to get that cantilevered look where the path extends out over the water, and I don't have any curbing that is showing up in the middle of my plaza. So this is all actually gridded path work underneath of this. I was lucky to have nice 90-degree angles here that allowed me to do that. And as we head this direction, you can see some new things that were definitely not there before. Namely, there is a building off to the right there, which is indeed a bathroom. And our path now extends beyond the plaza. And so I'm going to head that way first, and then we'll circle back around and take a look at this bathroom that I created. One of the challenges I faced with this was how I was going to transition away from this large plaza and back to something else, a different era in the park, a different style, a different feel. And so I needed to first and foremost narrow things down, and then I also needed to make my way underneath of the coaster and the train and along the river to the other side. So I've created a couple of boundaries here to help me do this. I've raised the terrain here to meet the train tracks. And you can see now our coaster goes into these tunnel portals, which are very much still a work in progress. I, as you can see, haven't really decided exactly what I want those to look like yet, so I was just playing with some different ideas. But you can see here that our path continues along the river now. Again, there's some spots to clean up, so you'll forgive my mess. But as we round this corner here, we're going to enter into a new area of the park, something that was developed at a different time from this plaza here. And so that's kind of where we end for right now in this area. And then we've got some work we need to do on this train bridge. And you can see that I've already got some work started here. I'm trying to figure out what I want that to look like. As we come back towards the plaza from underneath of the train trestle, we come upon the back side of the bathroom here. And originally I wasn't really going to do much work on the back side of it, but then I realized that you could see it. And while it might be covered up a little bit more with some natural foliage at some point, I didn't want it to be an eyesore necessarily. So I did extend the decorations and things onto the back side as well. And I've started to put in some trees just to get a feel for what some of this is going to look like. I'm trying to keep that nice grown-in look. I want it to really feel like it has been here for a while. This is by no means a new part of the park. And so as we come around here, with the exception of the actual entrances to the bathrooms themselves, this building is pretty much finished. Definitely got some of that unique mid-century flair to it. You can see this unusual hand railing. I don't know why this popped into my head when I was creating this, but I've seen this before where they create hand railings that are just like sideways planks. It seems nowadays like a very impractical idea because you can't really grip it very easily, but nonetheless, there it is. And I've sunk some poplar trees, I believe they're poplars, into the ground here to try and create these very vertical looking evergreen bushes, which I think has come in fairly well. It's always a good idea for those of you looking for tips to rotate these and change the height of them just to make them look a little bit more natural, unless you're really going for a very manicured look. And I am definitely not going for that in this area. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do as far as decorative foliage in the front here. It's by far one of my weakest points, but I I do at least have space drawn out for it. And then you can see I've also made some space back here with a path for some backstage area for the bathroom, probably where you'd have maybe some dumpsters and things for garbage, some other utility things, maybe a couple of small carts or whatnot stored back there. Just some easy access stuff, as we are in sort of in an extreme corner of the park right now. And then this pathway here that narrows is the entrance to our arrow looper, which I guess I should give the name to now if I haven't already said it. This is going to be called Copperhead, and the plan is for it to have opened in 1978, which is just a couple of years after the expansion of the park across the river. So this would have been their first major coaster since then. In fact, at least what's going to be in the park, this would have been the next coaster after Comet, which you can see across the river there. So it's been quite a while. Let's go ahead and walk the queue a little bit. You can see a different perspective on the station and also the work that I've done for the queue here. So we pass, there would be a fast lane queue here that would have been constructed at some point after this had opened, as they probably wouldn't have had one in 1978 when this coaster had opened. So they would have added some additional width here to the stairs, which were very difficult to work in with the terrain, but I think I did a pretty good job here. And then into this cattle pen building, which I was very happy with how it came out. It's interesting to look at without being a very expensive installation. This is not a spot where they'd have put a lot of money into, but I wanted to continue that style. So I've got the horizontal beams here around the outside. You can see a couple along the front at the top as well, where the roof is a little bit higher because it does have a gentle slope to help with water runoff and whatnot. You can see the pad here for what's eventually going to be the transfer track that has not been finished yet. As we take our walk into the cattle pen, path diverges. Off to the right is the fast access path, fast lane path, and then here these would be gates that you could spin to change the flow of traffic so that you could either use the cattle pens, or on days with a lighter crowd you can just have them zip right around the outside here. This gives a lot of really cool views of the ride that you wouldn't otherwise get. There's definitely going to be some dense foliage back here, but you're still going to get views, especially of this curve here that comes off of the MCBR as it comes down back to ground level, up and over the ride and the path, and heads that direction. And then as we make our way back towards the ride here, the station, come up to this concrete bridge that brings us adjacent to the station. This is where the fast lane queue meets back up with our normal queue. You can see there that I've started the work on the maintenance area. This was pretty common for arrows back then to have this dip off the transfer or the storage track here and down underneath of the station where they can do work and inspect the trains and whatnot. So heading up the ramp here, again, the path tool did not cooperate with me as I had done this, but I eventually got what I wanted. Come up here, and there is our station. The train pull in right now. One of the things that I love about this station is that the pillars are on the inside rather than right along the outside here, which really opens things up along the outside. You get these nice unobstructed lines all the way around the outside, and it creates that great visual effect when you're outside of the station that the roof is sort of floating up there, because you can't see those pillars as much from the outside. And then of course you can see the effect that that lattice work, that mid-century lattice work creates as it goes up above the exit path there. It looks very, very cool from inside, especially when you've got some of the trees and things in the background there. And let's hop across the other side here. I do plan to do some work eventually on this side with the operator booth, but I've just kind of left it as it is for right now. Alright, well let's head down the exit path underneath of our lattice work. This is fairly close here. We probably could jump up and touch this if we wanted to, which I did consider, but I'm not sure that that would have been as much of a consideration when this was built as it might be today. So I don't know whether I really want to bother myself with changing that at this point, because I do like the way that it looks. We come down here, a little bit of added support there with that steel beam. Again, would have been cantilevered through the building. We come down here, and we are back in our main plaza. And that is the plaza for Copperhead, a 1978 aerodynamics custom looper. Some of the things that I still need to work on in this area are, first and foremost, the supports. These are the lovely supports that Frontier created for this ride, and they did such a nice job until they decided what angle to put them at, and then they got that part completely wrong. You can see that while these should go more or less straight across the back of these corkscrews and would meet up with the spine in at least 3 or maybe even 5 spots, they go straight, they kind of go catty corner, and they meet at one spot, right at the very top. I'm not sure how much structural integrity that would actually give that part of the ride. I feel like there would be a lot of tension and twisting on that, which would be very bad. But that's how they decided to do it. This is an overhead view of the area now that it is in its current state. Something else I need to work on very much is this hillside. I need to get the transfer track down and completed for the ride. You can see that I've left space for the track to slide over on the right side there. And then I need to get all of this foliage done here that would be surrounding the ride. But I'm very, very happy that I've finally figured out what this crossing is going to look like here and how I'm going to move into the next part of the park, which is going to probably work its way upward, because this is a hill here, so we're going to have to work our way back up to this point and meet back up with the midway. We'll probably cross underneath of the train track again over here, and I've got to somehow work this giant racing coaster here, which I believe I plan to be by CCI, Custom Coasters International, sometime in the 90s. So we'll have another video about that at some point. The last thing that I wanted to show all of you was the view from the river, where you can see the transition from this very natural rocky shoreline that Masked Bandit has created to this man-made plaza, where it's actually a pretty sharp contrast between the two. you get this very natural, rough look, and then you get right into this smooth stone and concrete look here. And I think that's pretty fitting for the era, as they really tried to blend those two things together. You've got this very cold, man-made concrete over here, and this much more natural setting right on the edge of it, and they sort of clash in the middle. And as we move along with our train here, you can see all the way over here, we begin to transition back into that natural look, at least momentarily. I would imagine in order to create this, there would have been some major terraforming that would have happened in order to get this bridge abutment here to be structurally sound. They would have probably had to backfill a little bit to make this all level and to meet up with that. And then they'd have probably had to dig out a good bit underneath of here as well, to allow this to be constructed the way that it was. And there you have it. That is Copperhead and its plaza, straight out of the late 1970s, with all of its steel jankiness and interesting architecture to go with it. I hope that you all enjoyed this episode. I sincerely thank you for joining me, especially considering how long it has been since the last episode of Laurel Gardens, and I hope that there are other episodes to come for you all to enjoy. I'm going to leave you with what I'm sure many of you are looking most forward to, which is a POV video of Copperhead itself, even though there are definitely some things that have yet to be completed on it. I think that you have all waited enough to see what this ride is really like. So enjoy the POV, and I will see you next time. Bye.